Sharif and to condole his heart on these days, the martyrdom of Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam, according to the first narration. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wajil faraj.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. صلى الله عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا رسول الله. صلى الله عليك وعلى آل بيتك المعصومين المظلومين. لعن الله الظالمين لكم سادتي من الأولين والآخرين. صلى الله عليك يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله يا غريب يا مظلوم يا عطشان كربلاء. سيدي يا أبا عبد الله صلى الله عليك وعلى أمك الطاهرة المظلومة صاحبة الضلع المكسور والخد المسطور والجنين المسقط بين الباب والجدار، فاطمة الزهراء يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة. يا ليتنا كنا معكم سادتي فنفوز فوزا عظيما. الواثبين لظلم آل محمد ومحمد ملقا بلا تكفين. Those who hastened to oppress the family of Rasulullah, and while Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa was not even buried, was not even wrapped in his kafan. والقائلين لفاطم آذيتنا في طول نوح دائم وحنين. Those who attacked the family of Rasulullah after his martyrdom, they came to Amir al-Mu'mineen and they told him, tell Fatima not to cry all the time over her father. She either cries during the day or she cries during the night. والقاطعين راكة كيما تقي بظل أوراق لها وغصون. In order to stop her from crying over her father, they even cut the tree that she used as a shadow. ومجمعي حطب على البيت الذي لم يجتمع لولاه شمل الدين. Those are the people who came and they gathered the firewood on the house of Fatima. The house that if it wasn't for the house of Fatima, the religion wouldn't be compiled together. والداخلين على البتولة بيتها يا والمسقطين لها أعز جنين. They broke into her house and they killed her fetus, her baby Al-Muhsin. And she came out of her house when they took her husband Amir al-Mu'mineen, saying خلوا ابن عمي أو لأكشف للدعاء راسي وأشكو للإله شجوني. Those who claim to be Muslims, they took Amir al-Mu'mineen to the masjid. Fatima running behind Amir al-Mu'mineen, saying, leave my husband Ali, otherwise I will lift my hands and supplicate Allah to punish you in this moment. Instead of respecting the daughter of Rasulullah, they sent Qunfuz back to slap Fatima across the face. ولاذت ورا الباب اختفت فاطمة، ولاذت عصر المال مروه، ولاذات يا خايب نام جابلتك، ولاذات ذنب لجلة توسدها المنية، يا ذنب لجلة توسدها يا المنية. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون، والعاقبة للمتقين. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وجل فرجهم.
يقول الله تبارك وتعالى في محكم كتابه الكريم: ومن يتعد حدود الله فأولئك هم الظالمون. And whoever transgresses the limits of Allah, it is those who are the oppressors. آمنا بالله. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
We see that a lot of verses in the Quran and a lot of ahadith and narrations, they emphasize on the topic or on the principle of oppression and oppressors, speaking about various types or several types of oppression and several kinds of oppressors. Why the emphasis on this topic and on this principle? Is it hard to detect an oppressor? Since Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave me a fitrah and gave me intellect, that it's easy for me to understand what is the wrong behavior and what is the correct, what is good and what is evil. But why this kind of emphasis on this principle if it's easy to detect? When we see that the verses, they concentrate on this principle and concept, it is because a lot of times we do not, or we have not the ability in order to detect the oppressor and in order to see the oppression properly. Why do we see that nowadays people are moved only when they saw bloodshed? Only when they saw children are getting killed and women are getting killed, innocent people are getting killed. But this is not the only type of oppression. They were only affected when they saw an oppression that if they go through it, it would be painful and it would be obvious. They wouldn't accept. I wouldn't accept to go through this kind of oppression. And most of the time people, they stand up against this kind of oppression and this kind of tyrants. It's because they want a just system that doesn't oppress them as well. They would say that if I go through the same thing, that now I have to stand up against the oppressor so this oppressor can be eliminated. We don't want these tyrants to stay on earth because one day it will affect us. So when they see innocents are getting killed, houses that are built with money all the effort that they put in order to build this life is being destroyed, even though that this kind of harm is not the major kind of harm. We are more affected by it because we are too attached to the dunya. Do you know if someone is on the haqq, it doesn't matter to him, this physical harm. Like Ali al-Akbar, what he said to his father, Imam Hussein. He said to him, "Oh father, aren't you on the right path? أَوَلَسْنَا عَلَى الْحَقِّ?" He said, "Yes." He said, "Then why should we care whether we fall upon death or death falls upon us?" We see that what is happening nowadays in the world, it really showed the colors of a lot of Muslims or Arabs. You know, Arabs, they show themselves, we are the great nation. Even though that before Rasulullah, Arabs were the lowest nation on earth. That's why Rasulullah tells his companions that لا فضل لعربي على أعجمي إلا بالتقوى. That what makes you a better person, not the fact that you are Arab, is piety, being pious. What is happening nowadays shows the true cause of a lot of people who claim to be Muslims. So the real kind of tyranny is the tyranny that affects my hereafter, that affects my status on the day of judgment. If I die on the right path, I know that I'm going to the jiwar of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. So for us to really stand up for what is really considered tyranny and oppression, and I'm not saying this because I'm trying to tell people not to stand up against the tyranny. We all condemn Israel and what they are doing to the Palestinians and the Muslimin there. Because they are Muslimin, their blood is respected. And we have to defend them. As Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi says, when Abdul Rahman al-Muljam, who claimed to be a Muslim, he killed Amir al-Mu'mineen. But what he said to Imam al-Hasan and Imam Hussein, he said to them, كُونَا لِلظَّالِمِ خَصْمًا وَلِلْمَظْلُومِ عَوْنًا. Be the enemy to the tyrant. وَلِلْمَظْلُومِ عَوْنًا. Every oppressor you have to be a helper and a support. But here, why is it important for me to really make my standards precise and accurate? Because sometimes standing up with the oppressed to a point, to the end of the line, this oppressed can be an oppressor one day. We have narration that mentions that you have to support the oppressed until he becomes an oppressor. Sometimes a person, his haqq has been taken away from him. But when he wants to retaliate, he takes more than his haqq. He becomes a zalim. Do I still stand with him in that case? No. So the reason that I'm mentioning this, nowadays what is happening around the world, it affected the importance of understanding the reality of our identity. Some of our khutbah, they went up on the minbar, they said, on the day of judgment, you are not going to be asked about Karbala because you weren't there. On the day of judgment, you are not going to be asked about the attack on the house of Fatima al-Zahra and the law of Fatima al-Zahra because you weren't there. What you will be asked about is the tyranny that is happening nowadays. In fact, what's more important is to always stand up to that kind of tyranny, because that kind of tyranny is hiding the identity that teaches you how to stand up against the oppressor, how to support the Palestinians. Amir al-Mu'mineen, he without his teachings. That's why nowadays only the Shia, they are the ones who are supporting Palestine. They are the only sect that they are supporting Palestine, and they are losing their souls. Look what in Lebanon, more than 50 people that of the youth, they're getting killed to support Palestine, even though we are not in the same sect. But just because we are Muslims and we have the teachings of Amir al-Mu'mineen. While in other country that claims to be a Muslim, they had a concert of a singer while the children and the women are being killed. So what is more important here? To really hold on to the teachings that teaches you how to stand up against the oppressor and how to support the oppressed, or to support the oppressed itself. What's more important to hold on to the teachings, because these teachings will always support you and will always help you to detect when to support the oppressed and when and how to detect the oppressor. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this verse is telling us and teaching us what is the definition of oppression. He says, وَمَنْ يَتَعَدَّ حُدُودَ اللَّهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الظَّالِمُونَ. So oppression is simply every action or every behavior that is considered transgressing on the limits of Allah, which means disobeying Allah is considered dhulm in any way possible. And the types of oppression, sometimes a person oppresses himself. I apply this oppression on myself, and sometimes I apply the oppression on others. Like in the narration by Amir al-Mu'mineen, ظَلَمَ نَفْسَهُ مَنْ عَصَى اللَّهِ وَأَطَاعَ الشَّيْطَانِ. He oppressed himself. Whoever disobeys Allah and who obeys the shaitan. وفي رواية من أهمل العمل بطاعة الله ظلم نفسه. Whoever disregards acting upon the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he oppressed himself. This kind of oppression is hidden. I cannot see it. We see that not all the Muslims that went and protested against what is happening in Israel and Palestine were really applying, while defending the oppressed, they were oppressing themselves. You look at the photos, some of the Muslimin, they're not wearing proper hijab. They're like, you have a lot of people, they didn't pray even during the protest and they went to the protest. So when I'm standing against the oppressed, I have to be standing against all kinds of tyrants, including the tyrant which is the self, the inner self. And sometimes I oppress myself and sometimes I oppress others by hurting them with words, with actions, and sometimes I oppress others by silence. When I say nothing, when I stand aside and watch and not say anything. And this is what happened during the time of Amir al-Mu'mineen and Fatima al-Zahra salawatullahi wa sallam. 10,000 people, 10,000 of the Muslimin were present in Medina when the house of Fatima is being attacked. Why nowadays? The reason why I'm saying this, the reason why I'm trying to deliver a point here, inshallah, later on it will be clarified more and more. We see that now, I'm speaking about us as the Shia, we see how much we stood up with Palestine and against Israel. And this is important, and it's a must, because there is no one else is standing with them. There is no one else is supporting them. We stood up strongly, but before that, what is more important when it comes to the tyrant that killed Fatima al-Zahra, the daughter of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, and then we do not speak about it. We see centers that are ready to lose or to get their charity revoked for the sake of Palestine, but for the sake of Fatima al-Zahra, they're not ready even to hold a majlis. They're not even ready to mention her name. Why? Because we have to keep this history hidden, because it causes disunity. In fact, what really supports the unity is there is a truth out there that has to be shown. There is a truth. We have the Prophet, #1 man in the world, the best of the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Rasulullah, and his family. He's #1 man. What's more important than his family? Because his family means the religion itself. Rasulullah, before his martyrdom, by 6 months, every day he stands up in front of the door of Fatima al-Zahra and he says, إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيُذْهِبَ عَنْكُمُ الرِّجْسَ أَهْلَ الْبَيْتِ وَيُطَهِّرَكُمْ تَطْهِيرًا. And he would ask permission to enter the house of his daughter. Why is that? Why wouldn't he do that to any of the other people who are considered great companions? Because the religion starts in this house. The religion is protected in this house. To leave this truth that is related to Rasulullah, how am I going to look on the face of Rasulullah on the day of judgment? Well, this kind of truth, and I didn't stand up against this kind of oppression. We see that because our standards when it comes to oppression are twisted, we stand up with Palestine just because we have a common enemy, which is Israel, a great enemy, but we do not stand with the Shia that are getting killed in Pakistan. Or the Shia that are getting killed in Afghanistan. The Masjid Imam Zaman was bombed. No protests were made. No one posted about them on Facebook, and they're Shia. The war that is happening nowadays is a war on their identity against the Palestinians, because the land is part of their identity, their land. And they are trying to kill them and wipe them out just because they are Muslims. And this is their identity. But our identity is not only, we share with them being Islam, but we share with the others more. Afghanistan, they're Shia. They're part of our identity.
Very valid point.
So we have to, when I support an oppressed, I have to be supporting all of the oppressed. And my identity as the follower of Amir al-Mu'mineen is being threatened. If I support the oppressed to the end of the line, no matter what his identity is, my duty, even if a Christian man comes to me and he says, I have a right upon this person, he stole my property and he oppressed me, my duty is to stand with him. But I have to show that this person is oppressed only in this event. If he becomes an oppressor one day, I have to stand against him. Why is that? Because if I stand with him to the end of the line, this affects my true identity. And nowadays what is happening? People, they support a group of people and they disregard others. Why is that? Because that kind of treatment, when it comes to the oppression, is being dealt. So double standards here as well in this case. Sallallahu alaihi Muhammad wa alihi. So the first kind of oppression is oppressing myself by committing sins. And the second kind of oppression is oppressing others. Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib says, Wallah, لَإِنْ أَبِيتُ عَلَى حَسَكِ السَّعْدَانِ, if I sleep on the thorns. Hasak al-Sa'dan is kind of thorns that are very flat in the desert, that are very strong. If it enters, it doesn't break. It's very hard. He says, if I sleep on Hasak al-Sa'dan, on this kind of thorns, وَأُجَرُّ فِي الْأَغْلَالِ مُصَفَّدًا, and I will be dragged by shackles. أَحَبُّ إِلَيَّ مِنْ أَنْ أَلْقَ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ, is more loved and better for me than meeting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment, and I have oppressed one of his worshippers. وَغَاصِبًا لِشَيْءٍ مِنَ الْخُطَانِ, and here is the important point. He says, and how would I take what's not mine or oppress someone for the sake of a nafs that is very quickly and temporary exists in this world? يسرع إلى بلا طفولة. It's going to live for a very short time. ويطول في الثرى حلوله, and it's going to stay for long on the ground in the grave. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَعِزَّتِي وَجَلَالِي, by my might, لَا يَجُوزُ لِي ظُلْمُ ظَالِمٍ, that there is no kind of oppression that will go unpunished on the day of judgment. وَلَوْ كَفٌ بِكَفٍ, even a slap for a slap. وَلَوْ مَسْحَةٌ بِكَفٍ, even if a masha, someone wipes on your cheek in the intention to oppress you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wouldn't let that pass. Especially the da'if, the weak. Oppressing the weak. As Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, اتَّقُوا اللَّهَ فِي الضَّعِيفَيْنِ, be pious when it comes to the two weak individuals, the woman and the children. The wife, and especially the wife, I don't know if it's the case in Australia, but in general, when there is a house that is working upon the Islamic traditions, we see that the wife is weak. She comes and she lives with a stranger. Before he was a stranger, and then she has to be patient with him. And same thing, the man will be patient with her. اتقوا الله في الضعيفين المرأة والولد, and the child. And the most kind of oppression towards these two individuals is not to be a good role model. Is to be a person who doesn't play an important role in making this identity fixed in the self. If I do something that doesn't remind my children that your identity is the most important thing that will give you success in the day of judgment. Nowadays, we see that, like sometimes I stand up in the third line during praying Jama'ah, and we see a lot of youth and teenagers, when they pray, they, for example, they even look around, they see no problem with that. He's at the age of 18 and 19 and his prayers are not good. Where are his parents? And this what I'm talking about, when I talk about prayers, because it's something I do every day until it becomes a malaka, it becomes something normal to do. It's not hard anymore for me to do. I have to concentrate on that. This kind of oppression is the harshest, because this kind of oppression is what twists my standards in detecting the oppressor and detecting the oppressed, and how to support the oppressed, and how to stand up against the oppressor. So the الظلم الضعيف أفحش الظلم. The worst kind of oppression is to oppress the weak. And we have a generation. We see a generation after a generation, the way they deal with religion, it becomes less and less. And there is sifting here. لَتُغَرْبَلُنَّ وَتُغَرْبَلُنَّ وَتُغَرْبَلُنَّ. When we see that this dunya is leading, that nowadays, when I see a house being destroyed, I get affected and triggered. When I see a young boy is not praying, it doesn't affect me. And as I mentioned earlier, what's worse here is this kind of oppression, the hidden oppression. When I do not play a role in being a good reminder, being a friend who reminds people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then I'm oppressing myself and I'm oppressing the people around me. I'm oppressing the children, I'm oppressing the next generation. So Amir al-Mu'mineen, to a point, he doesn't accept an ant to be oppressed. This is why I mentioned that the Shia of Amir al-Mu'mineen are the #1 people that now they stand against the oppressed. With their souls even. Because their master, Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, he doesn't even accept that an ant would be oppressed. He says, Wallahi law u'titu al-aqalim as-sab'a. By Allah, if I was given the 7 continents to be my own property, ala an azlima namla, to oppress an ant, to take from an ant a piece of wheat, I wouldn't do it. And now the important point here, Ahlul Bayt salawatullahi wa salam alayhim, they warned us from supporting the oppressor. Istifta'at of Sayyid al-Sistani, he mentions that every company that supports Israel, effectively, it's haram to buy from them. It's haram to buy from them. It's haram to deal with them. Every company that supports these tyrants, it's haram to buy from them. To what point? To what point it's haram to support the Zalimeen? Harun al-Rashid, may Allah curse him, during the time of Imam al-Kadhim, he's the one who poisoned Imam al-Kadhim. There's a famous story of Safwan ibn Mahran, who was one of the companions of Imam al-Kadhim. Safwan ibn Mahran, his job was that he used to rent out camels. Like nowadays we have companies that rent out cars, he used to rent out camels. And then once Imam al-Kadhim asked him, he said, Ya Safwan, do you hire your camels to this man about Harun al-Rashid? He said, yes. He said, all of your characteristics are good and positive, and I love everything about you except for this thing. You hiring your camels to this man. He said to him, oh master, I don't hire him my camels for him to go to hunt or to have fun or for the travel of ma'asiyah that he does, but I only hire my camels to him when he wants to go to Mecca for Hajj. And I don't even go and serve him myself, I send my workers. Then the Imam told him, he said to him, don't you like for this person to stay alive until he comes back to give you the money for the camels? He said, yes, of course. He said, مَنْ أَحَبَّ بَقَاءَهُمْ فَهُوَ مِنْهُمْ. Whoever loves for them to stay alive for a longer time, he's from them. As if he supports them. This person, if he lives 1 second more, he's going to oppress them. Then I am playing a role in that. Then Safwan ibn Mahran, he came back and he sold all of his camels. And then Harun al-Rashid sent for him. He said to him, why did you sell your camels? He said, well, I became an old man and the workers are not doing a good job. So I sold my camels. He said, Wallah, that was not the case. Wallah, your master, Imam al-Kadhim, he's the one who taught you that. He said, but because you are a good man, I will not kill you. So, and Imam al-Kadhim taught this. That even during a trip to Hajj, and this person claims to be a Muslim, but he was a saffah. He was a killer of the people. He stole the money of the people. He used to talk to the cloud And he says, go cloud and rain wherever you want, because every outcome that you will bring is for me. Wherever you rain, and all the crops that comes out of you is going to be for me. This kind of tyrant, Al-Imam Al-Kadhim sallallahu wa alayhi, says to Safwan ibn Mahran not to aid him in that sense. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa alayhi.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali.
Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam says, إِذَا كَانَ يَوْمُ الْقِيَامَةِ, when the day of judgment arrives, a caller would call, أَيْنَ الظَّلَمَةِ, where are the tyrants? For them to be punished. أَيْنَ أَعْوَانُ الظَّلَمَةِ, where are the people who aided and helped the tyrants? He says, أَيْنَ أَشْبَاهُ الظَّلَمَةِ, where are those who looked like the oppressors? حَتَّى مَنْ بَرَى لَهُمْ قَلَمًا, even those who sharpened a pencil for them. مَنْ بَرَى لَهُمْ قَلَمًا وَلَاقَ لَهُمْ دَوَاتٍ, who sold them that ink that they used to use in order to write. فَيُجْمَعُونَ فِي تَابُوتٍ مِّنْ حَدِيدٍ, they will gather in a container of metal and they will be thrown in the hellfire. I have to support the oppressed until they become oppressors. And I mentioned before that us as Shia of Amir al-Mu'mineen, this is our identity that has been threatened all along. That we have to hold onto it very strongly. Because a man came to Rasulullah in the masjid and he looked at him and said, Ya Rasulullah, I love you. He said, do you love me? He said, yes. He said, then get ready to poverty, to faqr. And faqr here, poverty is not faqr only of wealth. Sometimes poverty, lack of health, all kinds of trials and bala. You are going to be tested just because you are a follower of Rasulullah. And then he looked at Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. He says, oh Rasulullah, I love Ali. He said, do you love Ali? He said, yes. He said, then get ready to the hatred of the people. Why do you think the Shia in Afghanistan are getting killed? By Muslims. Why? Because they are lovers of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Why do you think that the Shia are being called kafir around the world? Because they are the lovers of Amir al-Mu'mineen. And the only ones who stood up next to the Muslims are the followers of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Well then after that, after the other people, they win. Are they going to still support the Shia? Or they are going to call the Shia kafir as the others do? Are they going to see the truth? Or the truth is going to stay hidden? The teachings of Amir al-Mu'mineen is there. That's why when I mentioned that when I want to teach my son to stand up against the oppressor, I have to teach him as well that there are standards and there are rules and there are limits. As long as you are not compromising your identity, then if you support the oppressed and your identity is going to be wiped, then you are oppressing yourself as well. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa alihi.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali.
And I mentioned earlier that it's more important to hold on to this identity because this identity is what teaches me to stand up against the oppressor and to support the oppressed. What is this identity? I have to always remind myself. Yes, to stand up again with Karbala is much more important than standing up against the oppressor nowadays. Because Karbala teaches me. Right. To stand up against the tyrants who killed Fatima al-Zahra, salawatullahi wa salamu alayha, and to stand up for this kind of tragedy, yes, it's more important, even if I was not there. Because this is the lesson. It's not only history. It is what defines my status on the Day of Judgment. This is why Rasulullah is not only history. I didn't live on the days of Rasulullah. Does that mean I shouldn't stand up against those who oppressed Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and only concentrate on what's nowadays? Rasulullah is the one who taught this concept and this understanding. Then I have to always, when I defend the oppressed, I tell the world that Rasulullah taught me this. And then when I stand against the oppressor, I tell the world that Ali ibn Abi Talib taught me this. Ali ibn Abi Talib, that even when they usurped his khilafah, he still supported the Mazlum. Even though that the oppressed was one day a person who stood up against him. A person who denied the bay'ah of Ghadir. and what happened in Ghadir, the choosing of Amir al-Mu'mineen. So when I say this identity, because it's what gives you success on the Day of Judgment. One, this identity makes you a person who's Shia, which is a Shia خُلِقُوا مِنْ فَاضِلِ طِينَتِهِمْ. The Shia are created of the excess of the mud of Ahlul Bayt, of Muhammad and their houses. The Shia are عُجِنُوا بِمَاءِ الْوِلَايَةِ. عُجِنُوا, when you make the dough and you do ajeen for the dough, the narration says عُجِنُوا بِمَاءِ وِلَايَتِنَا. Their dough was made and was mixed with the water of our wilayah. The Shia and this identity, as the narration says, إِنَّ الْأَئِمَّةَ هُمُ الَّذِينَ يُنَوِّرُونَ قُلُوبَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. That the Imams are the ones who gives the light in the hearts of the mu'mineen. And this light, if it wasn't for this light, this heart would die. How many narrations they mention? مَنْ مَاتَ قَلْبُهُ فَهُوَ فِي النَّارِ. Whoever his heart would die, he's going to be in the hellfire. Because if this heart is dead and there is no light in this heart, then the reminder would be dead. He's not going to, why now Israel, the whole world is standing up against them, or they don't care? They just do whatever they want. You know? We thought that now we live in a world that there is justice and there are human rights and no one can, no one will go unpunished if he transgresses. Well, Israel are allowed. Why? So this heart, when it dies, the narration says, "Man laysa lahu wa'idun min nafsihi, la tanfa'u al-mawa'id." Whoever doesn't have an advisor from within, all of the lectures in the world won't benefit him. Amir al-Mu'mineen, Rasulullah held the hand of Amir al-Mu'mineen on the day of Ghadir, and he said, "Man kuntu mawlah, fa'aliyun mawlah." And you still, until this day, this event is mentioned in all of the books of the Muslims, in all of the sects. And we still see people, they're twisting the words of Rasulullah. They create a new expression or a new meaning of the word wali. Wali, it doesn't mean that he's your master. It means that he's your friend. So, it's Arabic language. And it's obvious. In every single sentence, other than Hadith al-Ghadir, wali means your master. Except in Hadith al-Ghadir, it has a different meaning. Now this water, it's water, but only because when it's related to Amir al-Mu'mineen, it becomes juice. So, the fourth thing that this identity gives you is knowledge. Why is Amir al-Mu'mineen called Amir al-Mu'mineen? And why no one else is supposed to be called Amir al-Mu'mineen? When a man came to Imam al-Sadr and said, "Assalamu alayka Amir al-Mu'mineen," the Imam stood up, he said, "Woe to you. Even me, I'm your Imam, it's haram for you to call me Amir al-Mu'mineen." Only Amir al-Mu'mineen. Why? لأنه يمير شيعته العلم. He gives the rizq of knowledge to his people. This identity, it motivates me to go and live next to him. الارتباط بزيارتهم ومجاورتهم. Sayyid ibn Tawus, every once in a while, he used to go and be a neighbor of a shrine of one of the Ma'sumin. He said, I become their neighbor in the dunya, maybe on the day of judgment I'll be their neighbor as well. Al-irtibatu bisulukim. This identity will teach you how to follow their steps. As we mentioned in Ziyaratul Jami'ah, آخذ بقولكم عامل بأمركم. I take your words and your teachings and I follow your commands. Because when you follow your commands, that's how you have stances against the tyrants. Physical stances, not only by words, not only by protesting. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. And now, this is the good news to the followers of Amir al-Mu'mineen and the holders of this identity that we are supposed to hold on to. That, as I mentioned before, the oppressor, when I support the oppressed, I have to keep my identity intact. Because when the oppressed, it doesn't share with me the full identity, then the picture is going to be blurry for the next generation. They will learn that this is a role model to the end of the line. In fact, this is not the case. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa says to Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says, هَذَا حَبِيبِ جِبْرَائِيل. This is my beloved Jibra'il. Tells me that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that He gave your lovers 7 things. He gave the lovers of Amir al-Mu'mineen 7 things. الرفق عند الموت. taking their soul when it comes to the time of the death very easily. وَالْأُنْسُ عِنْدَ الْوَحْشَةِ, tranquility during fear. وَالنُّورُ عِنْدَ الظُّلْمَةِ, and light during the darkness. وَالْأَمْنُ عِنْدَ الْفَزَعِ, and feeling safe on the day of Faza' al-Akbar. وَالْقِسْطُ عِنْدَ الْمِيزَانِ, being merciful when it comes to the balance on the day of judgment. وَالْجَوَازُ عَلَى الصِّرَاط, and the easy going on the sirat. وَدُخُولِ الْجَنَّةِ, and going to the heaven before everyone else by 80 years. Everyone in the narration it mentions, everyone on the day of judgment will be naked and barefooted except for the lovers of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Everyone will be called by the names of their mothers except for the Shia of Amir al-Mu'mineen, they will be called by the names of the fathers. Except for the lovers of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Those who have love of Amir al-Mu'mineen in their heart, they will be called by the names of their fathers. إِنَّ اللَّهَ تَبَارَكَ وَتَعَالَى, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, يَبْعَثُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ, that the Shia, they will come out of their graves on the day of judgment, and they are saying, لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله علي بن أبي طالب حجة الله. When they say that, فَيُؤْتُونَ بِحُلَلٍ خَضْرَاء, they will be brought dressed from heaven that are green from heaven, وَأَكَالِيلٌ وَتِيجَانٌ, and crowns from heaven, وَنَجَائِبْ مِنَ الْجَنَّةِ, to the end of the narration. This is your identity. If I give in to this, if I am a person who oppresses myself and I oppress the next generation by allowing them on the social media all the time, and these agendas is to wipe this identity. When we speak about the LGBTQ+, and we do nothing about it, when we do not stand up against the tyrants in the world and we do nothing about it, then the identity is fading just because of that. That's why it's important for us to regulate our standards when it comes to the oppression and the oppressed. Al-Imam al-Hussein salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi, when he went to the palace of Bani Muqatil and he met with Amr ibn Qais al-Mashriqi and his cousin, he said to them, when on his trip to Karbala, he said to them, did you come to support me? They said to him, Ya ibn Rasulillah, we have a lot of children and we have a lot of merchandise that we are afraid if we go with you, all this will be lost. Isn't this what we tell ourselves, especially in Australia? I'm afraid to lose my child because the government gives him a lot of rights, so I'll be easy going with him. Okay? I don't have to be harsh on him or strict with him when it comes to the prayers and fasting and obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but I have to be harsh on him when it comes to having good grades in school. You know? So they said to him, we have a lot of children, we have merchandise, we have trusts for the people, that we are afraid that it will be lost. And then the Imam told them, go. فَلَا تَسْمَعَانِي وَعِي, don't make sure that you don't hear my tragedy and you don't see my people. فَإِنَّهُ مَنْ سَمِعَ وَاعِيَةً, whoever hears our tragedy and whoever saw us being oppressed and he doesn't support us and he doesn't come to our aid, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will throw them on their nose on the day of judgment. Same thing when it comes to the tyranny that happened with Fatima az-Zahra alayhi salam. Do you know what happened there? All of the Muslimin agree, Sunnis and Shias, they agree that Fatima az-Zahra alayhi salam was oppressed by the people who were in charge at the time, after Rasulullah. They oppressed her. In Sahih al-Bukhari it's mentioned. And they came to her to apologize, and she died, as in Sahih al-Bukhari mentioned, she died and she was angry with them. She was not happy with them. And in Sahih al-Bukhari it mentions that Fatima yarda Allah li ridaha, that Fatima, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is satisfied for her satisfaction. So everyone, Fatima is satisfied with him, it means Allah is satisfied with him. And everyone, Fatima is angered with him, Allah is angry with him. And this is from Sahih al-Bukhari. The tragedy of Fatima, do you know what happened there? Why the history here is being hidden? You know, like how the hospital in Palestine was bombed and the lies was publicly there. They started to say, well, it's the rocket of the Hamas that attacked themselves by mistake. And then they changed it. They said, well, Hamas had a base in the hospital, so we had to attack them. We had to kill them. The lies change. Why the history is being altered publicly? Maybe first we see it. We know that it's a lie. If we don't show it all the time and we do not remind the people all the time, it becomes the truth. That's why until now some of the Shia, they are affected by this kind of the agenda, and they don't even mention the Musibah of Sayyidina Zahra. Then you are oppressing others who do not know this truth. That all of the Muslimin agree on it. Fatima was oppressed. She was attacked. Her door was burnt. Her baby was killed. Her rib was broken. Her husband was humiliated. Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. Her eye became red. Her face was slapped. The earrings were dragged from her ears. And she was 18 years old. This is a truth. This is history that is there. Do we still say that you don't have to stand up for it properly just because you weren't there? You know what happened there? On the house of Fatima al-Zahra? They gathered the firewood around the house and on the rooftop in the intention to suffocate the children of Hassan and Hussein and Zainab. Do you know what happened behind the door of Fatima? This door that Rasulullah used to knock on. The baby Al-Muhsin fell down on the ground. What is worse than that kind of oppression that Fatima can't call her husband for help? She can't say, oh Ali, come for my aid, because Rasulullah told him that the Muslimin around you will oppress you. If you hold your sword, then the truth will be hidden. People will think that you are taking the Khilafah by force. She can't call her husband. And usually the wife needs her husband in this kind of situation. She called Fidda. She said, Ya Fidda to asnidini wa ila sadrika Fidda. Oh Fidda, come and help me and leave me on your chest, because by Allah they killed my fetus and my son. And then Amir al-Mu'mineen was taken to the masjid in robes. Fatima al-Zahra alayha salam, she went behind Amir al-Mu'mineen and she said, leave my husband alone, otherwise I will raise my hands and ask Allah to punish you. The man that took Amir al-Mu'mineen, the second Khalifa, he told his slave, Qunfudh, go back to Fatima and tell her to go back home. Qunfudh came back to Fatima, he said to her, go back to your house. When she refused, he slapped her across the face until she fell on the ground. Fatima al-Zahra, after that day, she kept hiding her face from Amir al-Mu'mineen. The narration mentions that one day after the attack on the house, Amir al-Mu'mineen looked at the face of Fatima and he saw the red eye. He said to her, Ya Fatima, when did this happen? She said to him, Ya Ali, it's from the day that they took you to the masjid. The la'in came back and he slapped me across the eye. ويا أمر على عبده ضربني ومن ضربته للقاع ذبني. Oh Father, Ya Rasulullah, he slapped me across the face until I fell on the ground. After the death of Fatima, this was not the only thing that she hid from Amir al-Mu'mineen, not only the eye. When she told Amir al-Mu'mineen before her death, she said to him, wash me from behind the clothes, from above the clothes, because I am pure, I'm tahira, mutahhara. Amir al-Mu'mineen knew the reason. When Fatima was on the mortuary, while he was washing the body of Fatima, and he touched her side, he felt a broken rib on the side of Fatima. والله طلع واحد يا علي وهد حالك، والله شاض له حسين شو تسوي لك؟ أمير المؤمنين and he felt the broken rib, he sat on the side crying. I would say, Ya Ali, one rib and broke your back, one rib and he made your tears fall down. Oh Ali, what will happen to you when you see the broken ribs of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein on the land of Karbala? وساد يا ناعي لو شفت شيعة، وساد اخبرهم بالجرى علينا، وساد حسين الرمل صاير لا وساد 3 أيام مر معنا الوطية. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. والعاقبة للمتقين. إلهنا بالحسين الوجيه جده وأبيه وأمه وأخيه والتسعة المعصومين من ذريته وبنيه. Hasten the appearance of صاحب العصر والزمان. For his reappearance will be the solution of every problem and every tyranny on this earth. And grant us the tawfiq to be of his supporters, to be of those who will fight under his standard. O Allah, cure the sick, fulfill our needs for this dunya and for the hereafter. ولقضاء الحوائج ولشفاء المرضى ولتعجيل فرج المولى صاحب العصر والزمان وحفظ وجوده الشريف. ولأرواح أموات المؤمنين والمؤمنات الشهداء والعلماء من مات على الإيمان. نهدي الجميع ثواب ما قرأنا والثواب المباركة الفاتحة مسبوقة بالصلاة على محمد وآل محمد.